Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus 5G with me. Let's do the full review. This device with a very long name will be part of the upper middle range of Xiaomi. In the price segment that was launched in Mexico, we could say that it is a kind of mid-premium range, although I must anticipate you that it feels too expensive for what it really is. And if you see me from a country other than Mexico, you will surely find the price exaggeratedly high. In Mexico, it has been launched at $13,999. That's $850. Although they have immediately announced a discount for launch promotion, leaving its price at $12,999, but it's still a price that I consider high. It puts it to compete against really very solid rivals. So let's see what it can really offer us in this price segment. But I find it very curious that despite being a Redmi, specifically this model which is the top of its range, they are going to distribute it exclusively through Xiaomi stores, both physical and online and free market. That is, it does not arrive with phone companies or other distributors, and that is quite strange. Usually when they make these decisions, they are devices that bring their price very tight, but in this case the opposite is true. So right off the bat, it seems to me that the pricing and distribution are not very wise, but join me to know point by point what this device can offer us. Let's start by looking at the design, where we definitely find something that does come to satisfy what one would expect from a device of this price. That is, it has considerably thin bezels and an excellent use of the front. The screen practically uses all this space. And in addition, it is a device that integrates curved screen to give it a much more premium touch. So on an aesthetic level, it is something considerably good, and in addition, it comes protected with Gorilla Glass Victus. So it complies perfectly in this regard, both in aesthetics and resistance. On the right side, we will find the power button along with volume buttons in a plastic frame. While on the top, we will find the infrared for universal remote control, a microphone, an audio output, and another microphone. The left side is completely clean and serves to give you a look at its thickness, which is 8.9 millimeters. At the bottom, we find the SIM card slot. In this case, the unit I have in my hands has a slot for 2 SIM cards, although this may vary depending on the different countries. Next, we will find a third microphone followed by the USB-C port and finally the main speaker. On the back cover, we will also find a considerably attractive design. It comes with a glass cover to give a much more premium feel. So it complies well with respect to the materials of the covers, although the sides are not made of aluminum to finish rounding off the design. In my hands I have the Lunar White edition, but it is also available in Boreal Purple and Stellar Black. However, there is an edition with synthetic leather that is not distributed in Mexico, so consider it for other regions. The faux leather edition will have a much softer feel. Interesting is the mosaic they have created near the camera module to get a different feel of the design. In one of the boxes they center the brand name, and in another box they center the flash and a bit more text. But as was the case on the front, it is not only a beautiful design but also rugged, since it finally has IP68 certification, something that many of us were asking for in Xiaomi devices, and they have finally granted it here. So in this price range it meets very well in design. This back cover is also protected with Gorilla Glass Victus, rounding well the resistance. And by the way, Xiaomi ensures that the corners of the frame come reinforced to be more solid, to resist very well to falls. And they also emphasize that in the internal part, its composition has aluminum. Although in the frames we do not find that material, at least we know that the structure of the device does have good rigidity. The screen is very good, repeating the same size that Xiaomi uses in virtually all of its cell phones, 6.67 inches. In addition, it offers us a resolution higher than Full HD, therefore we can get to offer a very good level of detail without any doubt. It is specifically 2712 by 1220 pixels. Some call it 1.5K. It's AMOLED technology, so the colors are intense. And it also gives us good viewing angles so that from either side we still have a good view. The screen supports HDR content, although personally on YouTube I have found that it does not really play content with this format. The maximum brightness of the screen is really good. It goes up to 1800 nits when you're watching HDR content, so it's really very good. And the minimum brightness can also become comfortable for using this device indoors or at night. It also has a sunlight mode that's going to allow you to further increase the brightness of the display when it detects that you're under the sun. It also incorporates several screen color calibration styles in case you like one of them better. And it also has advanced settings where we're going to be able to log in to select even more specific color calibration. So really, Xiaomi seems to be one of the manufacturers that is offering us more software features to customize our viewing experience. In addition to that, it offers a reading mode that is not only a blue light filter like many other devices tend to include, but also notice that you can go in to customize and you can get to add texture on the screen. That is to say that you add an effect that makes it look like the screen is paper. Obviously, it doesn't give the same feeling of being a paper screen, but it obviously helps to have a little more comfortable viewing. Even remember that the screen goes up to about 120 Hz in its refresh rate. It will automatically adjust that rate to help keep battery consumption down as well, or manually you can set whether you want 60 or 120 Hz. So, both in hardware and software, the screen is really going to offer us some very good options, and it's definitely a nice point as well. I have to say that the sound on this device surprised me for the better. I think it is a very strong point because not only does it incorporate stereo sound, which in itself is already a positive experience, but it is also of very good quality. What I like most is that not only the main speaker has a good presence of bass frequencies, but also the secondary speaker, which by the way has two audio outputs, is going to offer us a good presence in these frequencies that usually round out the sound very well. So the sound really is of very good quality. I think it does outperform some of its... Again, I just dropped my cell phone and it's still intact. It's an endurance test. It seems to hold up well to drops. It got a little bit hurt on the shore, but it still works fine. Continuing with what I was telling you, the sound is really one of its strong points. It's really good. Let's listen to a little test, although remember it's not the same as listening to it live. But again, not only. It's going to offer us good sound hardware with good speakers, but also good software options. For starters, it includes Dolby Atmos, and interestingly, you can also select Xiaomi Sound if you prefer the surround sound setting. But something I like is that we also have access to a graphic equalizer with several presets and 10 bands available to customize our sound experience without the need to have headphones connected. So it has very good sound customization options. Although, as you realize, it does not include headphone jack, and of course that is an absence to consider, but increasingly common to see this absence in the range. So if you want to use wired headphones, you'll have to use the USB-C port, but if you're going to use wireless headphones, fortunately it does support the aptX codec, and it also supports the LHDC codec to offer good wireless audio resolution with compatible headphones. That's a strong point as well. And it also integrates 3 microphones, which is something that Xiaomi didn't used to do a lot, so it's a device that has matured very well. I think the 3 microphone experience is always good to try to reduce some noise. Below, you're going to hear an audio test recorded with this device.
Esta es una prueba de audio hecha con los micrófonos integrados del Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus.
I think the microphones can give us a good quality, although if you want to have better definition in the voice, you need to be close to the microphone. Next, we are going to see a video recorded with this device using the sound system of my living room at maximum volume to see if it gets to have any distortion in these environments. As you can notice, it can also record with good quality in this kind of conditions, so it can be a useful tool for concerts. The front camera is the 16 megapixels with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. It has a quick launch method for the camera, but the device must be locked, so you double press the volume button and this way you can access the camera. However, it is obvious that this gesture cannot be used if you are inside any other application, so I think it could be improved in that aspect to be able to quickly open the camera. Notice that this front camera is going to give us a very good capture speed, so in that sense the experience is very good. If we hold down the shutter, we start recording a short 15-second video, and if we slide to the side the shutter, we can usually start the burst, but in the front camera that option is disabled. In the bottom right corner we can activate a button for beauty effects that we can use with skin smoothing, making the face thinner and the eyes bigger. In this case they seem to have simplified the options that were included before. And with all the options enabled to the maximum, you can look good fake. But in addition to the beauty effects, filters appear available that we can preview in real time and simultaneously. Also remember that you can swipe down to show more options, and among them you can enable easy capture by showing the palm of your hand to have an easier picture. The front camera honestly looks much simpler than it should because we are talking about an expensive device, but the colors look very strange. It feels little precision in that aspect, although it maintains a sufficiently high level of detail. But specifically in color, I didn't like it having fixed focus. If you are too close to the camera, it could come out a little out of focus, but I think the focus is positive even with the arm stretched to the maximum to have a good group photograph. However, I insist that the colors and lighting in this photograph are not to my liking. Note that in interiors also the colors seem to be not very accurate. It gives me the feeling of a colorization a little colder than it was in reality, and the noise is still present, although I do not consider it so serious because it was a complicated photograph. But the colors, I insist, are not very good. In a backlit scenario, the preview still doesn't look optimized, burning out the entire backlit background. But it does have auto HDR, so it manages to do a slightly good balance of highlights and shadows. However, I feel it still looks overexposed to the backside and the color is still very bad. So the front camera could definitely be considered among the worst of this device. But interestingly, at night, this camera performs much better, so it seems to look a bit more comfortable when there's not so much lighting or so much backlight, because I really like the result a lot in this scene, although again the color a bit paler than I would like. And in a night backlit scene, obviously the result is not very good in auto mode, but notice how if you use the screen as a flash simulation, it can get to improve the result a little bit, and the night mode can also get to help. But the optimum will be to use the screen with flash simulation in conjunction with the night mode. And the result I think is good in level of detail, although it can look very unbalanced in color because the screen emits a very cold illumination that can be very unbalanced if you are taking a picture in warm lighting. So I insist that the front camera should be improved. Night portrait pictures I think come out well, very similar to what we have seen on this front camera, with colors that are not as intense, but fortunately it maintains a good contrast and also a good level of detail, having a nice blur in the background. But on the day we confirmed that it's not gonna give us good quality as it doesn't keep objects in focus, and again the colors look exaggeratedly pale, especially if you're in a backlit environment, so I didn't like the camera. On the back we find three cameras. The main one is a 23mm one with 200 megapixels f1.65 aperture, autofocus and optical stabilization. Then we'll have the 16mm ultra-wide camera, so it's not the widest on the market, but it offers 8 megapixels with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus. And what is unacceptable to me is to see that the third camera is 2 megapixel macro with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. Definitely the addition of this camera is completely disappointing, as it is an unnecessary camera in this price range. It would have been better to put in a zoom camera or make the ultra-wide camera autofocus so that it could function as a macro camera as well. It definitely disappoints too much, and this is a very weak point. Next, I will try to capture number 3 to more or less test the capture speed this device has. Remember that I will make a second attempt to be sure it was a good test and see how well this device takes pictures, and note that on my first attempt there was a slight delay of about a quarter of a second. On my second attempt I was a little more accurate, so I think it has a good capture speed without being extraordinary. The device also supports a burst of up to 20 pictures, which may be a bit short in the price range. Fortunately though, the burst seems to start almost at the exact moment, so you can get some pictures out of it, but as you realize, it is a very short time of only 1 second that the burst captures. So unlike other devices that reach a virtually unlimited burst, it comes up short. Again, in the bottom right corner, we have the button for beauty mode or filters, but in this case, beauty mode only has one setting, unlike the front camera. It has quick shortcuts to change the focal length or zoom of our picture, and you can also swipe with this ring, so the experience is quite comfortable in that sense. You can tap on the screen to adjust the exposure or the focus, but also remember that you can access the professional mode where we can manipulate other parameters like the white balance as well as the focus, and of course also the shutter speed, which can go up to 30 seconds, or also the ISO, which can go up to 6400. Finally, there is the exposure compensation, but a clear disadvantage is that it does not allow us to take pictures in RAW, and at this price I think it is something unacceptable. More experienced photographers will miss this feature a lot. Regarding Smart Capture, by default, this device doesn't seem to have an automatic document scanner, and if we enable artificial intelligence in the camera menu, you notice that it does give us the suggestion to enter document mode, where edge recognition and automatic cropping can finally be performed. And something I always like to point out about Xiaomi devices is that they also allow you to do some editing of this photo to apply some special effects, although it takes its time. But finally, you can apply a black and white scan or an enhanced mode that definitely looks much more advanced. It doesn't just look like a cropped photo. You can also crop, straighten, remove any folds, and also remove any notes that have been made on top of the screen. So the scanner is advanced, and of course you can also print this document on a physical printer, or if you want to save it as a PDF, you have to press the other print button that is in the share menu and finally select the option. Fortunately, it is able to recognize QR codes directly from the main interface of the application, appearing a floating button in the lower right corner. The 200 megapixel camera can be used in a special high-resolution mode, and you definitely get to notice this very high level of detail. So it's a very positive thing if you want to take photos in this style, or if you want to extract photos from your photos, which is unusual but can be useful for some users. So this point could definitely be considered one of its strongest points, because the photos do come out with a lot of quality in this high resolution mode. Outdoors, we are going to see that the ultra-wide camera has a slightly different color rendition than the main camera, so it doesn't maintain as consistent an experience, but I still think the results are good enough, although the chromatic aberration of this ultra-wide camera is quite noticeable. But it doesn't have distortions as severe as other cameras we've seen. The main camera curiously also reveals a bit of chromatic aberration, especially in these areas difficult to interpret in the light, so it gives the feeling that it looks in a pinkish tone in that part, but it is something normal in mobile devices, so we will not get so demanding. And I think that the photographs with the main camera that are 12 megapixels in automatic mode come out well. It's actually quite curious that this device allows you to take pictures with a 2x zoom setting, and it seems to maintain good quality, although I wouldn't say full optical quality, but it does look pretty good at this setting. Also included in the camera presets is the 4x zoom setting, and again I feel it maintains very good quality. I wouldn't say it maintains optical quality, but it does look like a well-detailed photograph at this zoom setting. In fact, talking about the whole zoom range, I think it has a good performance. The maximum zoom is 10x, although in this setting maybe you don't see such a good detailed definition, but I think the zoom is fine without becoming one of its strongest points, since in the Mexico launch price range there are devices that already have optical zoom, and this device still doesn't have that feature. Indoors, the ultra-wide camera shows little level of detail and colors that are still not so accurate. The main camera improves mostly in capturing detail and also improves in color accuracy. And if we zoom in on these scenarios, we realize that it definitely does not maintain optical quality, but it still performs well even in these low light scenes. For backlit scenarios, it is very curious that this device comes with HDR disabled from factory, so the results are not expected to be very good with this setting. Notice how the pictures come out with the background overexposed, although not completely, but neither the main camera nor the ultra-wide camera managed to give us a good result here. In fact, in the ultra-wide camera, in this kind of scenes, you are going to reveal even more chromatic aberration, and you are going to see a really very bad result in all these areas where there are highlights and shadows, because it looks like a blotchy result revealing pink chromatic aberration. But if you enable HDR mode, the result is going to be slightly better, although honestly not quite spectacular, but it manages to stand up a little bit better in these light conditions. At night, the ultra-wide camera has a barely acceptable performance, but using the night mode, it can perform a little better by reducing noise and better balancing the light area. Exactly the same will happen with the main camera, that in auto mode is not able to expose well the most illuminated areas in these dark scenes and appears a little more noise, but with the night mode I think the result is much better in each of these aspects, so it is highly recommended to use the night mode on this device. In fact, curiously, it also lets us use the night mode with the 2x zoom setting, although in this case there is not so much difference, and in fact I like the result we have in automatic mode better. And in the darkest areas you notice how the ultra-wide camera is not able to recover much color information, although with the night mode it definitely improves in this aspect without overexposing the darkest area. The main camera from the automatic mode gives us a very good performance, although the darkest areas perhaps come out lighter than we would like. And with the night mode is practically the same result, so there is not much difference, and in fact the same will happen if you use a little zoom. Honestly, I think the result is very good considering that it is a night zoom, and at night it will improve the sharpness a little bit depending on whether you use the night mode. This device lets you take panoramic pictures only with the main camera, so you do not have as much amplitude as you might find in some others that do allow you to do that action. However, I think that the photography is of good quality with good definition, although the chromatic aberration again can be very noticeable, and in some cases the fusion between one photograph and another could also be noticed if you analyze all these details. For macro photography, this device is not very good with the main camera, because if you try to get too close, the object will come out very out of focus. The ideal would be to apply a little digital zoom, 2x, and I think the result is positive, but I still do not like too much, as it still has a little aggressive and uneven blur on the edges, so in this case the macro camera ends up being useful, not because of its good quality, but because the main camera cannot be very close to small objects. So with this macro camera you can make up for that lack, although the colors are not as saturated and the depth of field does not generate such an intense blur in the background either. Finally, for portrait photography, I think the result is positive, in this case if we have a little more intense color, if it is able to detect the objects in the foreground to keep them in focus, so I like the portraits, but I would also like more to allow us to do a little zoom when taking portraits to have a more natural perspective of the telephoto lenses of professional cameras. For video recording, we will find in 4K as maximum resolution only for the main camera, because if you want to record with the ultra-wide camera, you will have to select Full HD because 4K is not available. In fact, the front camera is not able to record in 4K either, disappointing completely in this price range. So video recording seems to be a weak point as far as the maximum supported resolution is concerned. In the bottom right corner, again, we have a button to have some special color filters, but the video resolution is again downgraded to Full HD, abandoning 4K. The beauty filter also appears in case you want to record using this effect. And note that even recording in Full HD, we can't make the switch to ultra-wide camera. Again, it disappoints a lot in that aspect, and it offers a slider for zoom, but no quick shortcuts to switch to a certain focal length. It also includes a button to pause and resume content and another one to take pictures, but it doesn't have a button to rotate to the front camera without the need to stop our video recording, nor a button to turn on the flashlight. It only has a button to create bookmarks so that when you play the video, you can go directly to a point. When you have created markers in some videos, this flag symbol will appear so that when you play the video, you can jump directly to the specific moments you have marked. You can press the button and also adjust the focus or exposure manually, but you can also access the Pro mode, and note that if a video recording mode is available, where again you have available all these parameters, although it does not have a log recording mode or something more professional, but it is appreciated to have manual controls over our video recording. The video recording of this device I honestly did not like in terms of color rendering. Fortunately, it does support recording in resolution, which I don't find to be the most accurate. So the video recording I think is acceptable, but I could not consider it a strong point. In fact, with the ultra-wide camera, you can't record video in 4K, and obviously the definition will be a bit lower, and the chromatic aberration that I already explained that this lens has can be much more noticeable also in the video recording. In addition, the colors are very different between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera. In backlighting, the device does a good job balancing highlights and shadows. However, the colors of the shadows come out too pale. Notice how my red clothes actually look very pale. So I didn't like the colors in the shadows area, because in the highlights area it does have good quality colors, and it can also get a little confused in the focus adjustment when recording in this type of light conditions. So I think it still has a long way to go to really offer us a high quality video. With the ultra-wide camera, something very similar is going to happen. Again, the colors in the shadow area are a bit paler, although in this case we are not going to notice such aggressive jumps in the exposure changes when it detects or stops detecting the face. Indoors, I think the ultra-wide camera performs well, as noise is practically imperceptible and color saturation is well maintained even in these complicated scenarios. It would only lack a bit of contrast to make a better quality video, but I was surprised that the ultra-wide camera gave us this quality in these scenarios. Although obviously the main camera is going to offer us a much higher level of detail and much better quality in the recording in these scenarios where there is not much illumination. Meanwhile, at night again, the ultra-wide camera is going to look a little bit pale with a low level of detail because it doesn't have as much light coming in. So in these scenarios, it is not so advisable to record using this lens. Even the brightest areas, it can't balance them well, and in the darkest areas, it is not able to pick up even a little bit of illumination. So it is not recommended at all to record with this camera. Instead, it is advisable to record with the main camera that obviously will offer much higher quality and more definition, although it still struggles in the most illuminated areas, but that is still normal in this price range, would be required only to much more expensive devices. But notice how in this case, in the darker areas, it is able to pick up a lot more illumination compared to the ultra-wide camera. So definitely the night recording is very good, but only with the main camera. Regarding the stabilization, if you are recording video in addition to the optical stabilization, also has a good digital stabilization capable of reducing movements well when you are walking. Although if you are going to run, obviously the movements and vibrations of the autofocus are going to be much more noticeable. So for running or scenes of more action, it is best to activate the constant video mode. That would be a kind of super stable mode, although honestly you do not get to see too much improvement in this mode, but it better disguises the vibrations generated by running. With the ultra-wide camera, vibrations when walking or running could also go a little more unnoticed due to the large amplitude that this lens has. So I think overall the stabilization is good enough. This device does not have a portrait video recording mode, and the fast camera mode fortunately is in 4K and does have stabilization. So this can be a positive thing for recording different types of scenes. Also, you can set its speed from 4x, which can be useful for people, and it can go up to 1800x, so you could record plant growth. So I think the fast camera is going to be a strong point in this device. On the other hand, it is also going to offer us a slow motion mode in full HD. You can go up to 120 frames per second, and I think the result is going to look good quality. And if you want to go slower, you can go down to HD to go up to 240 frames per second, and again the quality I think is going to be positive. The front camera honestly doesn't record video very well. As we saw in the picture, the colors are quite strange. In addition, although it offers a good stabilization, it makes a rather exaggerated crop, so you need to have your arms stretched out if you want to be well framed. You will even notice that in backlighting, it is not able to balance light and shadow well, giving preference to illuminate the face, sacrificing all the illuminated areas of the background that come out completely burned. Also indoors, we continue to see colors a little pale without much precision, so it is a camera that I could consider simple. It is not going to stand out too much, although fortunately this front camera also incorporates the fast camera mode in full HD with good stabilization, but it doesn't have slow motion. So it is a front camera that comes quite limited considering the price that this device has. In fact, it is not going to integrate a dual video recording mode either. Not even within the short videos or vlogs mode that was integrated in other Xiaomi devices, so I definitely think Xiaomi should improve this device. This device came to the market with Android 13 and a MIUI edition. However, it has already received its HyperOS update. Therefore, we have a considerably renewed system. Although the ideal would have been that from the factory it arrived with HyperOS, since in this case we already spent an update, and consider that in this case we are offered 3 years of software updates with 4 years of security patches. Which is a good thing, although it is not the best in the industry, and at this price we could obviously ask for something better. As you know, Xiaomi tends to customize its operating system quite a bit with many added features. The first one I'm going to mention is the wallpaper carousel that I personally don't like, since as you realize, every time you turn off and turn on the screen of your phone, another background appears. Although they are too variable, there are even some very strange ones that I definitely hate to appear. So you can click on this part to access this carousel, and you can choose a specific category of things you want it to show you. So in addition to a wallpaper, it will show you some similar news or an article that has to do with that image. But personally, I don't like to see this kind of wallpapers at all. Fortunately, if you can disable it in the settings in case you don't like it, remember that Xiaomi also offers a themes section where you can customize your device in a very intense way. Since you will not only change the wallpaper but also the icons and even the lock screen and other things, there is a very good variety of themes to choose from. So in customization, definitely that if we have a very good experience. But something that seems even worse to me is that if you get to trying to change the wallpaper, you will encounter ads. In this case, no ads have appeared, but believe me, around the system are going to appear different ads when you open applications. That's something that on a device in this price range is unacceptable. I can come to accept it on inexpensive Xiaomi devices, but not on this one. Notice how when you open an application such as the security application, an ad appears, although in this case it is a Xiaomi ad. But the same thing is going to happen on many other apps. Plus, you're also probably getting too much spam through notifications. So it's definitely a very bad experience in this regard. In the wallpaper section, we are also going to be able to find the always on display feature that is going to allow us to have some analog or digital clock or even text or special covers to always show us even if we have our screen locked. In this part, we can also customize other aspects of our device such as fonts, icons, even the effects of the screen when receiving some notifications when it is locked. And remember that with HyperOS we have available this new customization on the lock screen, so you can change covers simply by holding down and unlocking the phone. Notice how a very nice variety of different style covers appear, some with magazine styles and also with the ability to customize the text, the image with depth detection and advanced stuff. So the level of customization of the lock screen, if I find it something very attractive and very nice too. Notice how I can select some predefined picture, or I can also load a picture from the ones that I have captured with this device. So I'm just going to do a test and see how it's able to detect the depth. I can also change the text that it has there. I can also change the style of the clock and other things. So definitely that's pretty nice how you can get to customize your lock screen. In fact, you can also put some effects on the image to give it a more creative touch, and you can also enable matte effects. So the lock screen is one of the most attractive elements that has changed in HyperOS. As you can see, I just got another one of these ads that I'm telling you about just by unlocking my phone and entering this theme section. The device also has several traditional gestures to control your phone. We can highlight the one of holding 3 fingers on the screen to take a screenshot. In fact, you can take screenshots of specific sections. That's a good thing. It could also be a round shape, so we have good options in this regard. We can also turn on the flashlight by double pressing the power button. This is something I would prefer for the camera, but in this case Xiaomi has restricted it only for the flashlight as you can't customize the action. It also features a back tap by double tapping the cell phone cover. In fact, it can be 2 taps or it can be 3 taps, and you can customize what you want to happen, although you can't specifically customize any app, but it seems to work well as you realize. The one-handed mode is iPhone style, so I personally don't like it, as although you can reach the higher areas of the screen, you can't reach the areas on the sides. So hopefully with another update they'll fix that. It also has an assistant for the front camera, supposedly to activate a beauty mode in video calls, but it is only compatible with WeChat, which is an application from China. Ideally, it would be compatible with WhatsApp, but it is not available. Remember that Xiaomi also has floating windows compatible with this smart sidebar, so we can open these apps to use them simultaneously. We can open a maximum of 2 apps at the same time in this format, and fortunately, yes, we can resize and reposition them. I like that when making the windows smaller, also the interface elements become smaller, so in this case it does have a good level of usability, although they keep exactly the same proportion and you can't change their shape. Also, it should be noted that YouTube is not available to run in this floating window format, although Instagram is. Remember also that we can minimize these windows if we orient them to some side and they remain as a floating ball. We can also convert them to split screen or full screen with a simple button. Interestingly, it also includes a heart rate reader using the optical fingerprint reader, so it may be a useful feature for some people. And another important feature will be my remote, which will take advantage of infrared, so you can use this device as a universal remote control. You simply choose the category of your device and then check it to start the setup process. Inside the gallery, notice that after selecting several photos, you can enable this creativity mode that will allow us to create different types of content. Notice how we can apply the detach effect on a photograph. It will automatically detect the object and we can create the transparent background or put some other background of our choice. So it has a very interesting photo editor. In this creativity section, we will also find the art option, which again will make an analysis of our photograph. Notice how it is able to give creative styles in different ways. So if you are one of those who like to give a creative touch to your photographs, you could get to take advantage of this section. It also brings a collage maker of different styles. You can simply select how you want it to look. It also includes a video editor, so if you select several clips, see how after processing you can start editing them without the need to download an external editor. Although this is an automated editor, so you simply select one of the templates you want your video to have and it will automatically create a video for you. So you can apply some color effects or you can access the editor manually, where we have a linear control over our content. We can add text, we can add music as well and select different color filters, so it's a considerably good editor. We can also access the enhance section where we can edit the exposure, brightness and other things about the color of our video. And finally, we have the option that says exposure rate, although from my point of view they have a bad translation because it's simply changing the proportion of our video, whether we want to edit a video vertically or horizontally. So the video editor seems to me considerably good, although it is a bit hidden. And the clip option, I don't know what it's for because it always tells me that the format is not supported. This device also includes a photo editor with artificial intelligence, so it is able to remove objects automatically. Notice how we could select the remove people option and it will do a scan so that we can remove anyone that has appeared. Simply press the X button and it will automatically do the fill, and it does it quite well. In this case, to remove the shadow that was left, we could also manually select this option, and I insist that the result is positive. But note that it would also allow us to change the sky directly. For example, in this case, the sky didn't come out very well, but in my editor, see how I can completely change how the sky looks. And not only in the daytime, but I can also make it look like a night sky with the trajectory of the stars and some other effects. Sometimes the result is more realistic than others, but in general I do like that you have this ability to edit the sky to change the style a little bit. Also note that you can hold down on some people and you can copy this element or just save it. And if you try to send it on Telegram, note that it's sent as a picture and not as a sticker, so it's still not something that advanced. But you may find it useful to quickly cut out a person. You can also extract text from your photos by holding down on them. Note that it is quite simple to do this action. The operating system, I think, is a point that still need to be improved little by little. The fact that it incorporates so many bloatware applications and so much advertising makes it look like an operating system of a very cheap device and not like a premium mid-range device. Fortunately, the experience does go up a notch considering that it has an X-axis Apex engine. So for example, at the moment of reaching the end of a list, we are going to feel a little bump as a vibration response from the cell phone of very good quality. Likewise, when closing these applications, we will have the same sensation. And likewise, in this type of lists, when we switch between each item, we also feel this optical response in a very premium way. Let's talk about security, and I'll mention to you that it has an optical fingerprint reader which, as you realize, works well. It's considerably fast, although not as fast as the readers that are outside the display, but I think the recognition is good, and in this case it allows you to create 5 records. So you have a very good variety, so you can register more people you trust. Also, you can change the animation of this unlock in case you want to have something more to your liking. And it also has an option of shortcuts so that automatically when unlocking you can access an application. Although it does not let us customize which applications appear in this list, then just unlock and hold your finger to reveal these quick shortcuts. But I insist that the ideal would be to allow us to choose which shortcuts appear here. And in addition to the fingerprint unlock, it also includes facial recognition, although as I always say, I would recommend this more for convenience than for security, since it is an unlock that is not totally secure and the system itself gives you that warning. It's not going to record your face from different angles, nor does it seem to have an option to tell it whether or not you want it to check for open eyes. Although it does have an option to hide the contents of notifications if you are not the one using the phone. And if you want your device to stay unlocked in some environments, the only thing it has available is automatic unlocking when you're connected to some Xiaomi accessory. But unlike other Android, it doesn't include Google's extended unlock that allows you to register some location for the cell phone to stay unlocked. So that to me is a disadvantage. The password manager is from Google and fortunately comes well configured to first verify by your fingerprint that it is you and then fill in the information, although it can only store users and passwords and no more. As additional options, within the file manager note that we have a secure folder, again we get an annoying ad. But to enter the secure folder there is a trick you should know. In the storage section we get another annoying ad. I can't believe it's happening. So you just have to swipe down on this list to be able to open this private folder. Obviously you can set an unlock pattern which can be different from your lock screen, and you can also access via your fingerprint. So here you can add all kinds of files that you want to remain private. It does not include a kids mode, but it does include a second space, so you can have 2 phones in one, each space with its own applications and files. Within the security application, we will also find other tools such as blocking applications for you to select which applications must verify again that you are you before allowing access. It also brings an option to hide applications and also has a security analysis to avoid any type of malware, although it is not in collaboration with any more experienced cybersecurity company, unlike other manufacturers that have collaborations with Avast or other companies. And as you notice, again, an ad is popping up. It also has dual apps mode where you can clone some apps to use 2 instances of these apps on the same cell phone. And if you happen to lose your phone, remember that there is Google Find My Device feature. But also Xiaomi has its own implementation, although it comes disabled. And the truth is that it is a bit complicated to find it. You must log into My Account. Then you must enter Xiaomi Cloud and give permission to everything that asks you. And finally, in this part appears the option Find My Device that is turned off by default. But you can turn it on to have a higher level of protection, since it will be much more difficult to reset your device with this option enabled. For some reason, Xiaomi brings it disabled from factory. So it is important that you enter to activate it if you want to have more security. Finally, like all Android comes with digital wellness options, where you can analyze the time you spend on certain applications and set limits on your children's cell phones. And it also has emergency options. So by pressing the power button 5 times, you can launch an emergency call. The battery is 5000 milliamperes, but honestly it didn't perform very well. It fell a little short of what we expected. In our test running the battery drainer in the foreground, it reached 4 hours and 18 minutes. And running the battery drainer in the background while watching videos in the foreground. So it shows having poor management of apps running in the background, as it gives 100% of the power to all the apps. So the battery could only be said to be acceptable but not outstanding. Fortunately, if you can choose a battery saving mode with what, you could surely extend this duration to much longer. And you could even enable an ultra saver mode that for some emergencies could be quite useful, because it restricts you many more options of the cell phone. In order to extend your battery life, you can still add some applications that you consider essential to you with a maximum of 6 applications. The 120 watt charger is really very powerful, although it is also quite big and heavy, so carrying it around can become a bit cumbersome. However, it does charge really fast. In my test with 15 minutes of charging, it got up to 58% battery. And it finished a full charge in 29 minutes. It's one of the fastest charging devices I've seen, so in a way, it makes up for the fact that its battery doesn't get that outstanding with good charging power. And to protect your battery, note that in this case, it now shows you the temperature information and the number of times you have charged it. In addition, you can have the normal charge or you can have the optimized charge, which you can adjust if you want to have the night charge protection, so that at night it charges slower, although I don't see it as necessary. With a moment that you charge it in the morning, believe me, you will recover practically all the energy. But it doesn't include a charge lock mode, so I'd like to see that option for those occasions where the device stays plugged into the power for a long time. For example, when you carry it in the car. So there is no such option. In fact, note how there is an option to speed up charging even more, although it may raise the heating. But you can increase the speed of charging if you want. Though believe me, even with these options disabled, it's going to charge in a good way. However, for the Mexico launch price, we could ask it to incorporate wireless charging or something that makes it look more modern, but it doesn't have those features. In connectivity, yes, we will find positive things as it does support 5G networks, giving us a good speed, and it also offers us eSIM, which is a feature that does not come in too many devices and can be very useful when you are traveling to add a data plan service just by scanning a QR instead of having to buy a physical SIM card. So those options I like, and also remember that in the security app you can also limit the mobile data that you're using. So you can specify which apps can connect to the internet using your mobile data and which apps can only connect to the internet using Wi-Fi. It includes Bluetooth for good stability with our accessories but does not include FM radio, although that is something usual in this price range. The screen projection can become advanced as it would allow you, for example, to project only a document or some games or specifically photos, so you do not project the entire screen in mirror but only some things. You can also minimize the applications that you are projecting on your cell phone to continue using it while the projection is maintained, and you could also get to turn off the screen of your cell phone or block notifications. So it is definitely a very useful projection for all the features it offers. Although it is duplicated, as you see in this part, there is another wireless screen projection, but this one is completely mirror type. It is not capable of projecting your screen via cable, but it does support Android Auto. We will also find NFC to be able to make mobile payments using this device with Google Pay or some other app. That is something positive, although it is within what one would expect in a device of this price. In the sensors, we do have good additions like accelerometer, geomagnetic field and orientation sensor, also gyroscope and light sensor, but the proximity sensor is virtual, so it can't be enabled so easily. Remember that these proximity sensors work with sound, and depending on how it bounces off your ear, it is able to detect that it is close to you. So you might get to have some inconsistencies with this proximity sensor. Xiaomi's ecosystem is arguably one of the most extensive with respect to the number of devices it reaches. You have many watches and many wristbands in addition to many earbuds, various tablets and various home accessories that you can connect to this cell phone, although they don't offer as advanced interoperability as other ecosystems since it doesn't have as many technologies, but it is definitely appreciated to have a good catalog of compatible devices. You can connect them all through the Xiaomi Home application, and as you realize from the quick settings panel brings direct access so that your devices appear in this part. Although it also brings Google Home installed, so you can use either application to try to control home devices. And as part of Xiaomi technologies, we will find My Share to be able to send and receive files easily between this device and another Xiaomi. And it also has Quick Share from Google that teamed up with Samsung to have easy sending with other devices as well. And being part of Android, in addition to Xiaomi's own earbuds, you can also get to connect with some ease to other accessories from different brands that integrate Google technologies like Google Fast Pair. Although as you can see, it is not such a fast connection, but it can become comfortable. And for the cloud, Xiaomi Cloud unfortunately is only capable of storing some basic information to keep a good synchronization between your devices, so it could store your messages, contacts, voice recordings, calls, your browser history and bookmarks, notes, calendar, your Wi-Fi network passwords, keyboard phrases, and Bluetooth settings, but you can't back up any kind of files to the Xiaomi cloud. Since, as they all count from the gallery, it tells us that you can connect to Google Photos, so it has a partnership directly with Google. In this sense, it does not give us an experience of being such a strong brand because it relies heavily on Google. Now let's talk about the performance, because it has the Dimensity 7200 Ultra processor, a considerably good processor with 12 gigabytes of RAM, and you can still extend it up to an additional 6 gigabytes virtually. So it seems to have a good amount of power in this processor and a good amount of RAM, so it doesn't get sluggish when you have a lot of applications open. It took 3.25 seconds on average to open each application. I don't think it was an exaggeratedly fast device, although fortunately in this case, even with all these apps open, it seems to maintain a remarkably smooth experience. So I think it's not going to stand out too much for speed, but it does have a good stability. I insist, I think it also maintains a smooth experience even with all these applications open. Maybe you didn't notice that much speed because of the operating system that possibly requires even more optimization for faster opening speed in the applications, but it notes that being inside the apps, it can get to navigate considerably smoothly. It doesn't seem to be having too many problems, although you do see at times some minor stumbles that in this price range could perhaps be a bit annoying, but it's getting pretty picky. Honestly, for the vast majority of users, the device is likely to perform considerably smoothly. Now let's try exporting this project by joining several videos recorded with this device, all in a total duration of 1 minute, to see how long it takes in this process. It took a minute to export it, showing that the processor honestly doesn't have too much power, so if you wanted this cell phone for video editing, I think you'll find better options for this price. But in storage, it is definitely very difficult to find a rival, as it offers 512 gigabytes. Internal storage, an excellent capacity to store a lot of information. Consider that in this case I have installed heavy games, and look, we still have enough space available. Although you cannot put a micro SD, then it's up to you to decide what you prefer. But definitely talking about internal storage, the experience is very good. For games, we will find Game Turbo, although it does not appear as a shortcut because by default it is hidden within the security application. You know that Xiaomi tends to do things a little weird, so this Game Turbo app, which is actually called Game Space, is going to allow us to have our games collected, and we are also going to be able to customize the experience we want to have in each of them. Whether we want to give priority to power saving, or a more balanced setting, or a high quality setting, or definitely customize the experience. So it has a lot of settings that we generally don't find on other smartphones. If you're one of those who want to customize your experience a lot, you might find it useful. Also in the settings, we can enable some other things and customize the performance mode a little bit more, as well as the do not disturb mode to avoid unwanted settings. When opening a game, this Game Turbo dialog also appears and additional options appear. For example, we can open applications in a floating window mode to answer messages while we are in our game. We can also clear memory and optimize other things, as well as free up some storage space. We can also enable Do Not Disturb mode from these controls, and we can take screenshots or video recordings. We can also enable a different color filter for our screen in case we want something special. And we can also start a wireless projection, as well as manage our Wi-Fi network connection and change the style of notifications. So watch how notifications would appear in a slider style so they don't get in the way while you're playing. It also has a voice modifier focused on games that support chat through calls to make your voice sound in different ways. Finally, it has a timer section focused for arena games that will allow you to remember when you can use certain powers and the like. In Call of Duty, by default, it loads high quality graphics at a high frame rate, but we can go up to very high quality. Even the ultra frame rate appears, but the graphic quality drops completely. So I think it's quite strange. In fact, if you use the maximum frame rate, you can't use the very high quality either, but only high. A setting that might be a bit convoluted, but anyway, it does give you various special effects available. Although obviously when you use the ultra rate, several effects are disabled at the low graphic quality that is available. So first we played with the maximum rate, and definitely the performance is positive. I think this game runs it with good quality. We can say that practically the stability is perfect. There are very few fluctuations while playing. Although it should be noted that the temperature came to rise a little more than we would have liked, reaching some of the highest, reaching some of the lowest. But overall, as I say, the gameplay is good, although if you record the screen, you might get to have a little more stumbles. Remember that the frames per second measurement is done separately from the screen recording. When we play at the ultra rate, it goes to 90 frames per second and again shows very good stability. Honestly, the stability looks very good, very few drops, and the lowest it dropped was 86 frames per second, so it performed very well. The temperature did get up considerably, up to 45.1 degrees Celsius. So I think if it's a phone that can get very hot, but at the same time it does give you a very smooth feeling in your games. Although in this case, when recording the screen, you can adjust whether you want to record at 60 or 90 frames per second, and we selected the option to record up to 90 to see if it was still able to maintain good performance. And in screen recording, I think it doesn't look as smooth. When recording, it can become a little bit less stable, so it's up to you to decide what you prefer. But if you don't record the screen, I think you can get a very smooth feeling in this game. In the Legends game, we changed the automatic setting to put a high setting at 60 frames per second according to your price. In this case, unlike what we have seen on other cell phones, it started the test at 60 frames per second and later tried to go up to 120. Possibly because of the temperature issue, because after a bit of time trying to get to 120, it came back to 60 frames per second. So it's a little bit strange behavior, but again, we see a temperature in excess of 45 degrees Celsius, so we can confirm that it's a device that can get to present more heating than we would like in gaming. But as I say, it maintains good stability. I think in various games it can give you a good experience. Obviously, it's not going to be able to give you a completely stable experience, but it's not a device that's 100% focused on gaming. In the case of SpongeBob SquarePants, it defaults to loading the average resolution and quality at 30 frames per second. However, for our test, we set the high resolution and quality to 60 frames per second. With this setting, we can say that again the experience is going to be positive with respect to the performance it is capable of achieving without recording the screen. I think you can play with considerably good ease. Note that the lowest peak was 53 frames per second, so it maintained good stability. Although again, the temperature was very close to 45 degrees Celsius. So it's not a device that's going to allow you to play very cool at these graphics qualities. But if you want to play cooler, maybe you could reduce the graphics quality so you don't put such a heavy workload on it. I think that despite not being a device 100% focused on gamers, it can give a good performance if the temperature does not bother you. Although it should also be noted that the touch sampling rate could feel a little low in some content, so the screen does not seem to respond as quickly or with such agility to the touches, especially in this game we tested. It will be up to you as a user how demanding you are in games. Finally, in Genshin Impact, this device gives us the high quality at 60 frames per second, considering the launch price that this device had in Mexico. Of course, if you find it at lower prices, it could be considered a more attractive alternative. And in this game, again, the experience I think is positive for those who are not so demanding, as it had an average of 46 frames per second. Obviously, at this price point, you're going to find much more powerful devices that are going to give you an even more powerful gaming experience. However, I don't think this device disappoints too much. The lowest it was 31 frames per second, which could still get to feel fluid, but definitely at the time of having these fluctuations could give the feeling of some cuts in the game that is not satisfactory for the most demanding. And again, the temperature issue could become somewhat complicated as it reached a level of 0 to 45.7 degrees Celsius. I insist that it is not a device 100% focused on gamers, especially for the heating that can reach, which can also become annoying in the hand when you're playing. In conclusion, this is a device that shows a good level of maturity of Xiaomi in some aspects. In aesthetics and in hand feel, it does give a premium touch, especially because of the optical drive that gives a very good response. But there are other aspects where I think Xiaomi should improve. For starters, the price I think is too high in Mexico. Compared to other competitors of this same price, it can get to fall very short. So if you find it at a much lower price, maybe it becomes a more attractive alternative. And the fact that it shows ads on the system in this price range for me is unforgivable, completely spoiling the user experience. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.